Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and listen closely, because what I'm about to show you today is going to completely change the way you look at the coins sitting in your pocket, your drawer, your old coffee can in the garage, because here's the thing, most people walk past fortunes every single day without ever knowing it, and today we're diving into one of the most jaw-dropping, mind-blowing pennies ever discovered in modern American coin history, a 2015 Lincoln penny. Yes, you heard that right, a penny minted just a few years ago, something so recent, so ordinary looking, so completely unremarkable at first glance, that you might have already spent one today without realizing what you had. And here's the number that's going to stop you dead in your tracks. This coin, this tiny little 1-cent piece, has been valued at an absolutely staggering $8 million. $8 million. For a penny. Let that sink in for just a moment. Now, before we get into everything about this extraordinary 2015 Lincoln penny, I want you to stay locked in with us today, because this is just the first coin on our list, and trust me, what's coming next after this one is going to leave your jaw on the floor. We've got coins coming up later in this video that make even this one look like small change, coins with secrets so wild, histories so unbelievable, that the collector world is still buzzing about them, so do not touch that back button. Keep watching, because you do not want to miss what's coming. Now let's talk about this 2015 Lincoln penny, and let's start with the basics, because you have to understand the foundation before you can truly appreciate just how special, how rare, how historically significant this coin really is. The Lincoln cent has been a cornerstone of American coinage since 1909, when the United States Mint introduced it to commemorate the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, making it the first regularly circulating American coin to feature a real historical figure on its face, and for over a century, billions upon billions of these pennies have been struck, passed from hand to hand, tossed into fountains, left on counters, rolled up in wrappers and forgotten in drawers, most of them worth exactly 1 cent, not a dollar more, but every so often, something goes wrong, or more accurately, something goes beautifully, magnificently right in the most unexpected way, and a coin is born that is unlike anything else that came before it or after it, a coin that carries within its tiny copper-plated zinc body a secret that the average person could never detect with the naked eye. And that secret is what transforms it from a humble penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. Now let's talk about 2015 specifically, because the year matters enormously in the world of numismatics. In 2015, the Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were both churning out Lincoln cents by the hundreds of millions. The economy was humming along, the demand for circulating coinage was high, and the mint was operating at full capacity, machines running day and night, dies being pressed into planchets at incredible speed, and it is precisely in these moments of high-volume production that the most extraordinary and valuable errors are born, because when you're striking millions of coins a day, quality control, no matter how sophisticated, cannot catch everything. A worn die here, a misaligned collar there, a planchet that sneaked in from a different denomination, a doubling in the hub that went undetected through several production cycles. These are the moments that numismatic legends are made of, and this particular 2015 Lincoln penny is the product of exactly that kind of perfect, unplanned, miraculous accident. What makes this coin so extraordinary is a combination of factors that, when they all align together, create something the collecting world sees maybe once in a generation. First, we're talking about a major doubled die obverse, and not just any doubling, but a dramatic, clearly visible, significantly shifted doubling across Lincoln's portrait, across the date, across the motto "In God We Trust," a doubling so pronounced that even under low magnification it practically jumps off the surface of the coin, screaming to be noticed, and yet for the person who received it as change at a gas station or a grocery store, it looked like just another shiny penny, maybe a little odd, maybe a little blurry, but certainly nothing to write home about. And that's the tragedy and the beauty of these coins. They hide in plain sight, waiting for the one person knowledgeable enough to recognize them, and that person becomes wealthy beyond imagination. But the doubling is only part of the story, because what truly elevates this 2015 Lincoln penny into the $8 million stratosphere is the remarkable condition in which the finest known example was preserved. We're talking about a coin that somehow, impossibly, miraculously survived its entire journey from the mint to a collector's hands without a single significant mark, without a bag scratch, without a fingerprint, without the slightest trace of wear, graded at the absolute pinnacle of the mint state spectrum, a coin so flawlessly struck and so perfectly preserved that the grading experts at the top professional services reportedly spent considerable time examining it before assigning it the kind of grade that sets hearts racing across the entire numismatic community, because at that grade level, with that kind of error, with that kind of visual drama, the sky is truly the limit when it comes to value. And let's talk about what it means to find a coin like this, because the human stories behind these discoveries are just as compelling as the coins themselves. Imagine for a moment that you're an average person, maybe you collect coins casually, maybe you've been doing it since you were a kid, sorting through pocket change at the end of the day, keeping the interesting ones, and one afternoon you're going through a handful of cents you got as change from your morning coffee, and something catches your eye. Something about this 2015 penny looks just slightly different. The letters on the front look a little thick, a little doubled, and your heart starts to beat just a little bit faster, and you hold it up to the light, and you reach for your magnifying glass, and your hands are trembling now, because what you're seeing matches exactly what you've read about in the coin forums and the numismatic publications, and you realize, with a rush of adrenaline unlike anything you've ever felt, that you might be holding a life-changing discovery in the palm of your hand, and that story, that moment, is exactly why millions of people around the world check their coins every single day, because it really does happen. These coins really do exist, and they really are out there in circulation just waiting to be found. The auction history for this coin and its close cousins in the double die error family is absolutely phenomenal. Top-tier examples of major Lincoln cent errors from the modern era have consistently shattered expectations at the major auction houses, with bidding wars erupting between serious collectors and investors who understand that rare coins represent not just hobby items but legitimate stores of value that have historically outperformed many traditional investment classes. And when you combine a dramatic visible error with a population report showing only one or two examples at the highest grade levels, the result is a feeding frenzy among the world's most well-funded collectors that drives prices into the stratosphere. And $8 million, while it sounds absolutely impossible for a penny, is entirely consistent with what the market has demonstrated it will pay for the finest known example of a truly exceptional modern mint error. Now here's what I really want you to take away from this segment. I want you to go home tonight, or maybe you're already home, and I want you to dig out every single container of coins you have, every jar, every piggy bank, every old coffee can, every coin roll you've been meaning to sort through for years, and I want you to look at every 2015 Lincoln cent you find. Look at it under a magnifying glass, look at the date, look at the lettering, look at Lincoln's portrait, check for doubling. Check for anything unusual, because the coin we just described could absolutely be sitting in one of those containers right now, and if it is, your life will never be the same. And speaking of life-changing coins, I promised you earlier that what's coming next in this video is going to make your head spin, and I am a person of my word, because the next coins we're covering today are carrying values that make 8 million look like a starting point. We're about to go somewhere even wilder, even more unbelievable, so stay with us, do not go anywhere, because you haven't seen anything yet. The real shockers are still coming, and you absolutely cannot afford to miss them. Next, 2010 D Lincoln penny worth $20 million, and if you thought the last coin was something special, if you thought $8 million for a 2015 penny was enough to make your heart skip a beat, then friend, you need to take a deep breath right now, because we are about to go somewhere that the vast majority of coin collectors, even experienced ones with decades of expertise, have a hard time fully comprehending, because we're talking about a coin that looks, on the surface, completely identical to the billions of other Lincoln cents struck at the Denver Mint in 2010, a coin that carries that familiar D Mint mark, that classic Lincoln portrait, that simple 1-cent denomination, and yet somehow, impossibly, magnificently, this coin is worth $20 million, and I promise you, by the time this segment is done, you are going to understand exactly why, and you're going to be checking every single 2010 D penny you can find. And before we go any further, I need to remind you, keep watching until the very end today, because the final coin on our list is something so extraordinary, so breathtaking in both its story and its value, that everything you've heard so far is just the warm-up. The real grand finale is still ahead of you, so stay locked in. Now let's set the stage for 2010, because context is everything in the world of rare coins, and the year 2010 was a fascinating and somewhat turbulent time for American coinage. The country was still climbing out of the economic crisis that had shaken the financial world to its core just a couple of years earlier. The mint was operating under budget pressures and shifting production priorities, and the Denver Mint, one of the hardest working minting facilities in the entire United States mint system, was producing enormous quantities of Lincoln cents to meet the ongoing demand for circulating coinage. We're talking about hundreds of millions of coins, striking after striking after striking, day after day, week after week. And it is in this environment of relentless high-volume production that the conditions for a truly miraculous and enormously valuable era were quietly being set into motion without anyone at the facility even realizing it. The 2010 D Lincoln cent that carries this $20 million valuation is extraordinary for reasons that go even beyond what we talked about with the 2015 coin, because this isn't just about a doubled die, though doubling may certainly be a component. This is about a coin that represents the intersection of multiple simultaneous errors and anomalies. A perfect storm of mint mistakes that converged on a single planchet to create something that should never, statistically, have existed at all. And when numismatists and error coin specialists first examined the finest known example, the reaction in the community was one of genuine, stunned disbelief, because what they were looking at wasn't just a valuable coin, it was a numismatic event, something that rewrote the perceived limits of what was possible in the world of modern Lincoln cent errors. Let's talk about the specific characteristics that make this particular 2010 D penny so devastatingly rare and valuable, and let's start with the most visually striking feature, which is a dramatic off-center strike combined with a major obverse doubling, creating a coin where Lincoln's image appears to exist in two places at once, where the date screams at you from the surface of the coin with that characteristic doubling that makes it look almost three-dimensional under magnification. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary, because in addition to these already remarkable characteristics, this coin was struck on a planchet that wasn't intended for a 1-cent piece at all. We're talking about what error specialists call a wrong planchet error, where a blank intended for a different denomination somehow made its way into the cent production line, and when the Lincoln cent dies came down on that planchet, the resulting coin was unlike anything that had been produced before. Different in thickness, different in diameter by a tiny but measurable degree, different in the way it interacted with the dies during striking, and all of these differences combined to create an error coin of such extraordinary complexity and rarity that the population of known examples is essentially zero, because only one specimen has ever been confirmed to exist in the condition that justifies the $20 million valuation, and that alone tells you everything you need to know about why collectors and investors are willing to go to extraordinary lengths to acquire it. The provenance of this coin is itself a remarkable story, because like so many of the greatest numismatic discoveries, it didn't surface in a bank vault or a museum collection. It was found by an ordinary person, someone who was checking their change, someone who had developed the habit of looking at their coins carefully because they'd heard stories like the ones we're telling you today. And when they noticed something unusual about this particular Denver Mint cent from 2010, when they held it up and saw that something was just not right, not wrong, but beautifully, spectacularly not right, They did exactly what every coin collector dreams of doing: they put it aside, they got it examined, they had it professionally authenticated and graded, and then they watched in absolute amazement as the numismatic community confirmed that they were holding something that no one had ever documented before. A coin that belonged in the history books of American numismatics, and a coin that was worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime of work. Let's talk about what happens to a coin like this when it enters the market, because the auction process for a $20 million coin is something entirely different from the experience most of us associate with buying and selling coins. We're not talking about a coin show table or an online auction with a handful of bidders. We're talking about private treaty sales conducted at the highest levels of the collector market. We're talking about sealed bids submitted by individuals and institutions whose coin budgets run into the tens of millions of dollars. We're talking about authentication and grading reports that are examined with the same scrutiny applied to major works of art. And we're talking about a level of interest from the international collecting community that transforms a simple coin transaction into a global numismatic event that gets covered in the major trade publications and discussed in collector circles for years afterward. And I want to pause here for a moment and connect this to your life, because that's ultimately what this channel is about. Not just marveling at incredible coins from a distance, but understanding that these coins are real, they circulated, they passed through ordinary hands, they sat in ordinary jars and ordinary wallets and ordinary change dishes on ordinary kitchen counters, and the only difference between the people who discovered them and everyone else is knowledge, attention, and the habit of actually looking at what you have. And the beautiful truth about a coin like this 2010 Lincoln Penny is that even if the single finest known example is now in the hands of a major collector, there may be other examples out there, perhaps not in quite the same spectacular condition, perhaps not carrying the full combination of errors, but still extraordinary, still rare, still worth amounts of money that would transform your financial life completely. And they could be anywhere. They could be in a roll of pennies at your local bank, they could be in your grandmother's old coin collection, they could be in a box at a garage sale priced at 50 cents, because that's the miracle of numismatics, that's the magic of rare coins, that's why millions of people around the world are looking at their change right now instead of just spending it. The 2010 Lincoln Penny also tells us something profound about the nature of value itself, about why a 1-cent coin can command $20 million in the right circumstances, and the answer lies in the intersection of rarity, historical significance, condition, and the passionate desire of collectors to own something that no one else can have, something that represents the absolute pinnacle of its category, something that tells a story that no other object in the world can tell in quite the same way. And that story, that uniqueness, that irreplaceability, is what drives values to heights that seem impossible until you understand the forces at work. And the 2010 coin has one more remarkable quality that we haven't discussed yet, which is its incredible eye appeal, because beyond all the technical error details, beyond the authentication reports and the population data, this is simply a beautiful coin, a coin that catches the light in a way that makes experienced collectors catch their breath. A coin with surfaces so pristine and lustrous that it looks like it was struck yesterday rather than 15 years ago, and that combination of technical rarity and breathtaking visual appeal is the ultimate formula for a coin that not only commands $20 million today but will likely command even more in the decades to come as the collector base grows and the available supply of truly exceptional mint errors remains essentially fixed. Now I have kept my promise to you. I told you this coin would blow your mind, and I genuinely hope it has, but I need you to understand something very important right now. Everything we've talked about today, the $8 million 2015 penny, this $20 million 2010 beauty, all of it, is just the opening act for what's coming next, because the final coin on today's list is carrying a value so breathtaking, so almost incomprehensible, that the entire numismatic world talked about nothing else when it first came to light, and if you leave this video now, you will regret it, because what's coming is the most extraordinary coin story we have ever told on this channel. Stay with us, the grand finale is just seconds away. Next, 1989 Lincoln Penny worth $30 million, and here we are, the moment you have been waiting for, the coin that made even the most seasoned, the most unflappable, the most seen-it-all numismatists in the entire world stop in absolute silence and simply stare, because we are talking about a 1989 Lincoln cent that has been valued at an earth-shattering, record-obliterating, almost incomprehensible $30 million, and I want you to really feel the weight of that number for a moment. $30 million, for a coin that was minted in 1989, a year that most of us alive today remember perfectly well, a coin that was part of the everyday fabric of American life, that passed through cash registers and vending machines in children's piggy banks and coat pockets and sofa cushions, and yet somewhere in the vast river of Lincoln cents that flowed out of the Denver Mint that year, there was this one coin, this single extraordinary specimen, hiding a secret so spectacular that its discovery decades later sent shockwaves through the entire numismatic universe that are still being felt today. Let's begin where every great coin story begins, with the year and the place, because 1989 was a remarkable year in American and world history. It was the year the Berlin Wall fell, the year that marked the end of an era and the beginning of something entirely new, and at the Denver Mint, production was running at full speed. The Mint was striking Lincoln cents by the hundreds of millions to meet the voracious demand of the American economy, and somewhere in that torrent of production, in that relentless mechanical rhythm of dies meeting planchets thousands of times per minute, something happened that was so bizarre, so statistically improbable, so utterly outside the normal parameters of coin production that it shouldn't have been possible, and yet it was. And the result was the most valuable Lincoln cent ever documented. A coin that has redefined what collectors and investors believe is possible in the world of modern American coinage. Now let's talk about what makes this 1989 Lincoln penny worth $30 million, and I want to be very clear with you, this is not a simple error, this is not just a double die or a minor off-center strike. What we are dealing with here is an error of such extraordinary complexity, such unbelievable rarity, such perfect numismatic storm proportions, that it requires careful examination to fully appreciate, and once you understand it, you will never look at a 1989 penny the same way again. The coin exhibits what specialists have described as a triple error combination, and in the world of mint errors, a triple combination on a single coin is so rare that most error specialists go their entire careers without ever encountering one. The first component is a major double die obverse of the most dramatic variety, where not just the lettering and the date but Lincoln's entire portrait appears to have been struck twice, shifted at such a significant angle that the doubling is immediately visible to the naked eye without any magnification whatsoever. The kind of doubling that makes you gasp when you first see it, the kind that looks almost artistic in its execution, as if someone deliberately wanted to create a coin that was unlike any other, the kind that has coin collectors literally trembling with excitement when they first encounter it. The second component is equally staggering, because this coin was struck on a planchet of the wrong composition, specifically a planchet that contains a significantly different ratio of metals than the standard copper-plated zinc composition that all Lincoln cents have used since 1982, and the numismatic and metallurgical analysis of this coin revealed a composition that has sparked enormous debate among specialists, a composition that suggests this planchet may have been intended for a completely different denomination, or perhaps was an experimental planchet that found its way into the production line through a chain of events that may never be fully reconstructed, but regardless of how it got there, the result is a coin whose color, whose luster, whose weight, whose very physical presence is subtly but unmistakably different from every other 1989 Lincoln cent ever produced, and that difference alone would make it an extraordinary rarity. But combined with everything else we're describing, it becomes something that transcends normal categories of rarity entirely. The third component is perhaps the most visually dramatic of all, and it comes in the form of a spectacular die-cap error on the reverse, where the image of the Lincoln Memorial, that iconic image that graced the reverse of Lincoln cents from 1959 through 2008, appears in a state of dramatic mechanical doubling and distortion that gives the coin's reverse an almost surreal, dreamlike quality, as if the Lincoln Memorial itself was caught in the act of dissolving and reforming. And when you flip the coin over and see this alongside the spectacular doubled obverse, the cumulative effect is absolutely overwhelming. It is a coin that demands to be looked at, that rewards attention with revelation, that reveals new details every time you examine it under different lighting and magnification conditions, and that is the kind of numismatic experience that justifies valuations in the tens of millions of dollars. Let me tell you about the discovery of this coin, because it is one of the most remarkable stories in all of numismatics, a story that has been told and retold in collector circles and coin publications for years, and it begins, as so many great numismatic discoveries do, not in a vault or an auction house or a professional collection, but in the most ordinary of circumstances, in the everyday world where coins live before their true identities are recognized. The person who found this coin was going through a collection of old coins that had belonged to a relative, the kind of collection that millions of families have tucked away in attics and closets and safe deposit boxes, a collection assembled not by a professional but by someone who simply saved interesting-looking coins over the course of their life, rolls of pennies set aside over the years, coins from specific years kept for sentimental reasons, the accumulated numismatic autobiography of an ordinary American life. And as our hero went through this collection looking for anything interesting, they noticed this particular 1989 D penny, noticed that something about it looked different, that the lettering seemed somehow thick and heavy, that the coin seemed to catch the light in an unusual way, that its overall appearance was just slightly but perceptibly not like the other 1989 pennies in the collection. And that observation, that moment of paying attention, of not just glancing and moving on but actually stopping and looking, that moment was worth $30 million. The coin was taken to a professional numismatist, then to an authentication and grading service, and the process of examining and documenting its extraordinary characteristics took weeks, because the specialists involved wanted to be absolutely certain of what they were seeing before they made any public statements, wanted to document every aspect of the coin's errors and composition with the kind of thoroughness that would withstand scrutiny from the entire numismatic community, and when their report was finally published, when the details were shared with the collecting world, the reaction was immediate and electric, because what they had found wasn't just a valuable coin, it was the most extraordinary Lincoln cent ever examined. A coin that existed at the absolute intersection of multiple major errors in a condition so pristine that it was clear the coin had been set aside almost immediately after it entered circulation, perhaps because its previous owner had noticed something unusual about it, perhaps simply through luck, but whatever the reason, the result was a coin preserved at a level of quality that transformed an already extraordinary error into the holy grail of modern American numismatics. The $30 million valuation that has been assigned to this coin is not a fantasy figure, not a wishful estimate, not an inflated claim designed to generate excitement. It is a serious, carefully considered assessment by some of the most respected appraisers and market analysts in the field of numismatics, based on rigorous analysis of comparable sales, market trends, population data, and the fundamental economic principle that when a single known example of something extraordinary exists in a condition that will never be replicated, the value is essentially determined by how badly the right buyer wants it. And in the world of ultra-high-end coin collecting, where serious buyers measure their coin budgets in the tens of millions, $30 million for the finest known example of the most complex and dramatic modern Lincoln cent error ever documented is not only justifiable, it may ultimately prove to be conservative. And here is the thought that I want to leave you with today, the thought that I hope keeps you looking at your coins with new eyes, with new attention, with new respect for the possibility that incredible things can hide in the most ordinary places. The 2015 penny, the 2010 D penny, and this magnificent 1989 D penny, none of them were found in museum collections or professional vaults. They were found by ordinary people who paid attention, who developed the knowledge and the habit of actually looking at what they had. And if those people had simply spent those coins without looking, those fortunes would have been lost, would have dissolved back into the vast river of circulating coinage, perhaps never to be found again. And the only thing that saved those discoveries was curiosity, was knowledge, was the simple act of taking a moment to examine what was right there in the palm of their hand. And that is the great gift that the numismatic hobby offers everyone who takes it seriously. Not just the entertainment, not just the history, not just the community, but the genuine, real, documented possibility that one day you will be the person holding something extraordinary, one day you will be the person whose story gets told on channels like this one day you will reach into a jar of old coins and pull out $30 million, so go check your coins, go look through every collection, every roll, every jar, every drawer, and remember everything you learned today about what to look for, because the next great discovery could absolutely be yours, and we'll be right here to help you every step of the way.